Welcome to Code Sandwich Hour, a certified fresh event where we talk code and sandwiches, and it takes about an hour. This week's special guest is Kelly Moore, developer advocate at Ansys. Welcome to the show, Kelly.
Thanks, Sean. Excited to be
Really,
here.
I'm excited for you to be here as well. I think this is going to be a really fun show. And before we introduce the show or anything like that, I like to ask the most important question first. So important that it comes before the intro, and that is, what is the best sandwich?
The best sandwich is a fried green tomato sandwich on Texas toast bread with garlicky kale and smoked eggplant mayo.
Holy smokes, that's like that is very prescriptive. I love that. Does the sandwich have a name, or is this just a thing that you created?
It's called a Florida fried green tomato sandwich. It's at a restaurant called Market on South in Central Florida. So it's like
Okay.
a vegan restaurant, and they have like a lot of different vegan sandwiches. Mostly processed food sandwiches, like the fake chicken. But I try to stay away from the processed food stuff. And like this was like one of the freshest sandwiches that they have, and I tried it and I'm completely hooked. I actually had it yesterday.
Amazing. Okay, and so the Texas, I feel like when I've had Texas toast, it's just been from like a box that says Texas toast, and I don't know if this is official or real or authentic or anything. So can you describe like what's the official definition of it? What has to be, what are the qualities that have to exist for you to consider the bread Texas toast?
It's a good question. I have no idea. I just,
Okay.
yeah, I looked at the ingredients in the menu. I'm like, okay, so I guess that's what Texas toast is. But essentially, it just looks like a white bread toasted with some kind of like smoked paprika on top of it.
Oh, okay. Interesting. I feel like when I've had it, it's been more like soaked in garlicky butter or something like that, and then
Yeah.
baked. I don't know. That might not be, like that might not be the traditional Texas toast. I don't know. I
Right,
should
right.
look this up now. Yeah, yeah. Could be. But I don't, that is a really interesting and unique sandwich. It sounds salty and delicious, but also fresh at the same time.
Yeah, it's really good. If you and Brian are ever in Central Florida, let me know and I'll get you some Florida fried green tomato sandwiches.
I mean, now
Awesome.
we're gonna have to come up with an excuse to come down there. Yes, that
Mhm.
sounds great. Okay, well, now that I am sufficiently hungry immediately after lunchtime, I feel like let's go into the rest of the show so I can stay distracted from this hunger. So for those of you who are watching or listening at home, please feel free to, I suppose you could use this time to go make a sandwich while we're introducing the show, and then you can, yeah, just be entertained and also not left so hungry. Anyways, so as usual, this show is the rest of the show will be a series of 3 segments. Each has its own purpose and theme catered to our guest. Now, usually I have been a little goofy and made the names of these segments more punny. But today, Kelly is fluent in Portuguese, and I thought it would be a really interesting and selfishly a learning exercise for me to learn how to count in Portuguese. So that's where we're going to keep our names really simple, and we're gonna learn how to begin counting in Portuguese with our sections today. Okay. So, and you're gonna have to help me because I'm very bad at everything that isn't English. So this will be a good learning exercise.
Awesome.
Okay, so for those of you listening into the recording, just noting that these shows are recorded live during the first and third Thursdays of each month at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in the United States, which is 5 p.m. GMT. The live shows are then later syndicated on CFE.dev and YouTube in video format, or also in audio format, wherever you prefer to get your podcasts. And so with that, I feel like I'm ready to get started. What about you, Kelly?
Likewise.
Okay, let's dig into it. So first segment, how do we say one in Portuguese?
Mm.
Okay. And maybe you'll have to quiz me at the end to make sure that I am retaining this knowledge. Okay, so with this first segment, usually we spend this time exploring our guests' early days and how they got started in the tech industry. And those stories I find those stories really interesting because people can come from all sorts of different backgrounds. And as I was looking through your work experience, which I tend to do to try to get some inspiration on like what are some topics that we could really focus on, especially in these early days. And I was immediately so overwhelmed that like within less than 5 years, you've gone from HR to marketing to tech team lead to tech writer to tech evangelist to data scientist to engineer to dev advocate. And on paper, it feels like it's such a dynamic career, just jam-packed into a few short years. And so because of that, I wanted to start maybe a little bit earlier than we usually would. And so I'm hoping you can kick us off by telling us about your schooling and your motivation for starting your career in the HR space.
Sure. That's interesting. Okay, so first I want to say that the reason why my LinkedIn probably looks that way is because I held multiple roles simultaneously, which is
okay.
yeah, it's not something that you see a lot. Yeah, and I just did that because, well, when I was in software engineering boot camp, I heard the excuse that recruiters gave the alumni, oh, we don't want to hire you because you don't have any experience. So I told myself, well, I'm just going to get experience right now. So I started doing things like technical writing and things of that nature. But the HR stuff, that was before I broke into tech. I had no technical experience at that time. And then my executive director promoted me to head of marketing at his company, head of marketing communications, which was a job that I was really bad at. I'm really bad at marketing. But the reason why I broke into tech is I was sitting at a YC startup school lecture in 2018, back when they still did it in person. And I think it was Paul Graham that was lecturing that day, and he had said something along the lines of, if you're in this classroom and you are a non-technical founder building a technical company, your job for the first year is to get your technical founder coffee. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. I'm not getting anyone coffee. I don't even drink coffee. So I'm like, okay, so I guess it's time to learn how to code. And it's something that had been in the back of my mind quite often, just working at startups and noticing that if you are not a developer or you can't code and at any type of level, your contributions are sometimes limited. So I'm like, okay, I need to break into tech. So I went to software engineering school and then started freelancing while I was a student. I didn't wait for a company to give me permission to, be a software engineer or any adjacent roles to that, and just started freelancing as a technical writer. And then also started freelancing in my own community. So with I remember I had made a dentist appointment, and I went on the website and I saw that my dentist's website was super archaic. It was probably just HTML. So what I did was I revamped her website, and after my cleaning, I pulled out my iPad and I showed her what I had built. And I said, hey, I'm about to graduate. I noticed that maybe you need a new website. I built this for you. Could you maybe, give me your thoughts on it? And if you like it, maybe pay me what it's worth. That way I can just splash this on my resume so I can, just have the experience to talk about in an interview. Sure, no problem. and that's how I got my little experiences. Yeah, and then after that, just started working at Career Karma part-time while I was still studying, of course. I did some technical writing there. And then when I graduated, I got my first full-time little dev job as a developer advocate at a fintech company. But I didn't want to leave Career Karma because I just loved the culture and I love the founders. They're super.
And what did Career Karma do? What were they all about?
Yeah, so essentially they help marginalized people break into tech, but they help everyone break into tech.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and there are career coaches that help the community decide like what flavor tech they want to break into, whether that's UX design, data science, software engineering, even tech sales. So all these different flavor of tech jobs. And yes, I was doing tech writing for them. And then when I got my full-time job at a fintech company at the Walla, they still needed help, and they needed help in terms of like evangelism. So I got promoted into that tech evangelism role where I was, hosting live rooms and doing interviews with people from Goldman Sachs and Google, like software engineers from Google, Netflix, etc., and in hopes of like motivating the community and helping them decide like what track they want to focus on. Super rewarding. I loved working there. But yeah, from there, and please like stop me if I'm rambling.
Well, no, this is great, but yeah, let's pause there and back up a little bit, and then we'll kind of fast forward. So I'm curious. You said you didn't like the marketing role at the first company you were working with, and you had heard a talk, and that was kind of like changing your mind. Was that around the time you decided to go into tech? Like, was it specifically because you didn't like marketing, and you like what was the thing that kind of pushed you over the edge of, hey, I really want to do this thing?
Yeah, I think it was the fact that I just wanted a more I just wanted a job that challenged me a bit more, and also that made me feel like I was making an impact, not just inside the company, but outside of it as well, if that makes any sense. Like building a product that other people are going to use.
Okay.
Something.
So do you feel like it's more about, to you, it's more about the thing that you're representing versus the role? And now the reason I ask that is because there's the dev advocacy or relations, or lots of terms in this space, and it's this huge umbrella that means something different at every organization. And in some cases, you're working really tightly with the engineering team, and in other organizations, it's basically a function of marketing. And I'm in a smaller organization, and I'm essentially doing both of those things. And so you said you really didn't like marketing, but you also then really gravitated towards this tech evangelism, this sort of like developer advocate sort of role. And so do you feel like there's a line there that you crossed that feels better, or more about the thing that you're representing?
I think I just fell into it because I had so much technical writing and content creation experience.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, I feel like the reason why I was bad at that marketing job is because I didn't know what I honestly did not know what to do. Like I didn't know what I was doing. Like my background at the time was just in HR and like writing here and there. Like I feel like I'm a really good writer. That's one of my strengths. And the executive director saw that and was just, okay, let me put you here. Because I need you to do this.
Yes.
And maybe I did do a good job, but I didn't feel like I was doing a good job, if that makes any sense.
Yes, absolutely. And also I have an odd parallel to that story of like, you're good at writing, do this thing. I was co-oping or interning at a construction management company when I was in college, and I was studying civil engineering. So I was on that path to being more of an engineer or a civil engineer, construction manager. And this is in 2008, 2009, like when the economy tanked, is the housing crisis and all that. That everybody reduced, a lot of those internships just disappeared, and mine was going to, like, my job site was shut down, or I wasn't going to be able to be in the field anymore.
Mhm.
But one of the other, I think it was the head of marketing, had come across my resume and was like, "Ooh, here's this goofy engineer
Yeah.
who says he likes to write, so we're going to put him
Mhm.
in marketing." And then that was a weird thing that kind of got the ball rolling for me, and I got,
Mhm.
just like, I was like, this marketing, definitely not for me, not
Yeah.
very good at it, but the foundation, I still feel like, of the writing and the positioning and all of that, I still continue to take throughout my career. So I think it's such an interesting parallel for sure.
Yeah. I think if you bring this up with any person in that role, they'll probably have the same answer. They'll
Yeah,
probably have like
yeah,
a similar experience. Yeah.
I think so. I think so.
Mhm.
Um, okay, so tell us about the. Okay, so you decide you want to go. You want to be challenged. Marketing doesn't feel right. How did you decide to go into this boot camp?
For the software engineering.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, so I was doing the YC startup school, and the boot camp that I chose was like backed by YC, and that's how I found out about them. And they were
Okay.
doing the ISA at the time, and my goal. So excuse me, I was living overseas before um, I did startup school, and my goal when I came back to the United States was to become debt free, and that wasn't going to happen if I had to go back to university. So when I heard about the ISA, which stands for Income Sharing Agreement, and it's an ISA is different for every program and for every school, but essentially I'll share what my contract says. So essentially it says if and when Kelly lands a job as a software engineer or similar, Kelly will pay 17% of her income, of her gross income, if she's making at least 50K gross yearly for 2 years, or up until she pays $30,000. So there's a cap. So I'm like, okay, that's a good deal because I'm not going to take out any student loans, and it's like almost a job guarantee, right? So I'm definitely going to get um, like a job. The chances are high in the industry. And I have like that support from the school helping me do that as well. So that's how I chose that boot camp. It was because of the ISA and because it was already in the community that I was in.
Okay, I love hearing that story, because I feel like I come across the negative stories with ISAs more frequently. That and there's certainly issues with them, but I love hearing that that was the thing. You were like, no, this makes this approachable, and helps you get into the industry. Okay, so um, yeah, that's exciting, and like, that's okay. So that now we're at the beginning of your tech adventure. I feel like, let's transition into our second segment. So how do we say two in Portuguese?
Dois.
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 Okay. 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 Um, great. And in this segment, we're gonna spend kind of the bulk. This is usually the longer one, that I like to talk more about what you're doing today, and yeah, and where your interests have been lately in tech. And so I know we kind of stopped where you have transitioned and just gotten into software engineering. Um, I want to come back and fill in some of those gaps, but thought it would be interesting if we fast forward and jump all the way to today. So if you feel like you need to set the context and fill in some of the history, that's totally fine. But just really curious, like, what are you doing today? I know you're in between roles, so like, what were you doing, and what are you going to be doing at Ansys as well?
Yeah, so before I was doing DevRel at a computer vision startup, so just specializing in CV there. Right now, I'm just enjoying my last week of vacation until I start my new role at ANSYS. I start on the 13th, but I'm probably going to start working starting next week, just for myself, just so I can get mentally prepared to hit the ground running when my official start date comes along. And yeah, so at ANSYS, essentially what it is, they specialize in simulations. And, in DevRel, we are very accustomed to, so we have a product that was built by developers. And in DevRel, we're essentially teaching other developers how to use that product, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
What I love about ANSYS is that, sure, the simulation software was built by developers, but it's not just for developers to use. It's not only for software engineers, it's for all engineers. And you with a civil engineering background could probably appreciate this. So there are aerospace engineers that are going to be using it, mechanical engineers, and even physicists use simulation software, right? So like, I'm just very happy and very excited to be around like all these smart people. I'm going to be learning a lot of things. Yeah, so really excited about that. And my direct manager has a lot of engineering experience as well. He worked at IBM, used to be a CTO, and used to be in DevRel as well, like as an evangelist. So very excited to learn everything I can from him.
I know you haven't started yet, but can you maybe give like in broad strokes an overview of what is simulation software for folks who might not have any idea about the space?
Yeah, absolutely. So have you ever used Postman before?
Postman, yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So imagine a product like Postman that you can, instead of APIs, instead of like the API URL, it's just like Python code snippets. And okay. You can also, you also have visualizations to go with it, right? So let's say, for example, I'm a mechanical engineer and I'm building a flywheel, which is essentially a mechanical device that stores energy as it rotates. I'm going to want to build a simulation of that design and that idea before I cut any piece of steel, in order to not only save me time, but also money and material, right? So yeah, so that's what the simulation, that's like the problem that the simulation solves.
Interesting. So is with the product you're going to be working on, is in your example, is the mechanical engineer writing the Python code then?
It doesn't, he or she can, but more the developer on a team would be helping him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
But absolutely, like if a mechanical engineer wants to run the Python scripts along with we have our own library called PyAnsys, then for sure. And like, I'm really excited to make that process super easy for whoever it is that wants to build that simulation. So I was talking to my my direct hire, Chris, and he, like, we were talking about nowadays we have like citizen software engineers, like software engineers who didn't need to do the CS program in university to get their jobs. We have data analysts and data scientists that went through the same or a similar route. Like, what we want to see, and what I would love to see as well, is like citizen simulators. So you have this simulation product, you want to build a simulation for whatever mechanical engineering or aerospace engineering product that you are trying to build, you can go build it. Even a university or high school level, like for a science project, you want to build something and you want to see how it's going to look like, or you want to see what problems and the nitty-gritty physics will show up. Simulate it first. build a simulation of it first before you go build it.
So if you're going to do that, like if it's even even a high school kid or person trying to simulate some problem that they've been given, you still have to have, I suppose you have to have some understanding or design on what the thing actually is ahead of time.
For sure.
Right. So,
Yeah.
so is that, can that just be, it's maybe a silly question, but can that thing be kind of dreamed up during the process of writing the simulation, or is it pretty standard to always go through some process, whether it's like drawing in CAD, or can you even just sketch on a paper? Like, what's the step right before the simulation process begins?
Yeah, I suppose you can do that, especially like if you are going through a tutorial and you just want to substitute it for a similar design that's maybe not the exact design that the tutorial is giving you. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. So I thought it'd be kind of interesting to jump all the way to the present, because it's connected to what we were talking about when you transition, but also there's this like space in the middle where it looks like you started studying data science quite a bit more. And so can you tell us about that point in your career? Like, what got you into more of the data space and maybe away from the software engineering a little bit?
Yeah, I actually, I'm still volunteering at Correlation One as a community manager for them and helping,
Okay.
yeah, the alumni and students land their first data roles. But I, excuse me. So when I was at Dawala doing developer advocacy there, and then working part-time at Career Karma as a tech evangelist, so like we mentioned before, DevRel it's a dev team that looks different depending on the industry that the company is in, as well as like the stage the company is in, right? It looks different company to company. What happened at what happened at my first DevRel job is that I loved it. It was great, but I was only coding like 30% of the time in a good quarter. So I'm like I had that
okay.
urge to still want to code. And I was getting a little bit bored and I didn't necessarily want to leave. So I'm like, okay, I want to learn something new. What can I learn? And I just fell into data science, and a friend of mine was working at Correlation One as a TA. And he said, well, I work at this company, and it's difficult to get into, but if you get in, you won't have to pay tuition because it's free. Like hedge funds pay for it, and other companies sponsor your seat. So I'm like, okay, I'll apply. And then I got accepted, which was awesome. So I just started doing that. And I did it part-time while still working full-time at my dev role. And I was actually, there was a moment while I was juggling all three, Dawala, Correlation One, and Career Karma.
Ooh, that's a lot.
Yeah, and then I had to let Career Karma go because it got to the point where I was about to, like, I had to start building my project for Johnson & Johnson, which was one of the partner companies for my program. So I'm like, okay, this is serious. I have to focus more. Yeah. So
did that lead to a different job, or did that did you then kind of work it into your current job, or yeah, how did that that process kind of work its way back into your life and career?
Yeah, I did both. So, but both of those things, I made it work in the role that I had at the time. So, for example, I saw that our support team was asked, like we had questions being asked, like the same questions every single day, but by different people, So what I did was I took that data from the Slack channel. I compartmentalized it. I don't know if I said that word right. Remember, English is like my third language. So I sectioned it out to different topics. Okay, this is a topic about API. This is like just a general technical concept topic, etc. And then built like an internal tech sessions around those frequently asked topics. And then after that, a month after that, after the tech sessions, I took the data again and I compared it to the data that I had gathered before the tech sessions. And I think FAQs or questions in general had decreased like 87%, like 87% decrease
Oh,
on
okay.
related questions, which was awesome. And then, yeah, and our CT, or sorry, our vice president of engineering was pretty astounded by that result when we when we shared with him in one of the meetings. So yeah, I got creative in using it internally in my own role.
Interesting. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And it did lead me to the role that I landed after that, which was in DevRel, but in computer vision, like specializing in computer vision, because it's essentially you are, tinkering around with Google Colab notebooks or Jupyter notebooks. And for those who don't know what that is, you can think of a Jupyter notebook as, it's like, if I had to explain it it's like a readme.md file where you can run code as well as write text. And you usually do it in Python.
Okay.
So you're tinkering around in those notebooks, and you're also like building full stack applications around a computer vision model. So like it's like beneficial to have both skills, right? Both the data science and the software engineering. So I'm like, yes, I can use both.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, computer vision, that's kind of is that in the AI space? Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, what kind of interesting things were happening within your computer vision space?
There are a lot of interesting things. I feel like CV is a very enchanting technology. Excuse me. One thing that I think I'm pretty proud of. Sorry, give me 1 second.
Oh, you're good.
I think one of the things that I'm most proud of is so at Correlation One, when I was still a fellow there, which by the way, like C1 is probably the best. I got the best education out of any education that I've ever gotten. Dr. Timnit Gubru, who was she's a research scientist, a data scientist, and she worked at Google doing AI research. And excuse me, she's very big at solving the problem of algorithmic bias, and specifically in CV models. So when she came in and did a lecture about it, a guest lecture about it, and I was totally mind blown. And she went in and spoke about how the bias isn't only in humans; it's in like everyday objects. Like she pulled out an off the shelf model that was supposed to be able to identify hand soap, but it was only identifying like the bar soap version of hand soap as hand soap, and then the liquid version it didn't recognize that as soap at all because it wasn't trained to recognize that as hand soap. And also on top of that, when you fed it bar soap from a foreign country like Nepal, it didn't recognize it as soap at all. It recognized it as food. You see?
Interesting.
Yeah, super interesting. So I'm like, okay. And yeah, so I dug into that, and like I excuse me, I did a rock, paper, scissors CV model, and I tried to, make it as unbiased as I could. And I loved that whole process because like it just exposed like how you can make something unintentionally biased and the reverse. Like I just learned a lot through that project, and then I also went to an event that Carnegie Mellon and Emeritus hosted, to get students to sign up for some of the Carnegie Mellon programs, and that's what I did my talk on was that project, and like combating like the biases that you see and like how you can combat it. So like you essentially just need a more diverse data set, and you of course you need to label it correctly. And then doing things like active learning. So for example, just using that SOAP CV model. Hey, if the model isn't recognizing this bar soap from Nepal as hand soap, then I'm intentionally the human in the loop, taking that picture, uploading it to the data set, retraining it and redeploying it in order to help the model, learn that this too is hand soap.
Gotcha. Okay. I think that's so interesting. And I love the concept of unintentional bias. Like that's such a, I don't know. There's so much to study in that space. Do you feel like can you remember a time when you, was there a moment that was particularly memorable where you were introducing bias, but you had no idea, like it totally, whether someone helped you discover it or eventually you discovered it and you're like, why was I doing that thing? Or just like, I don't know. Yeah. Like some epiphany on a specific project.
On a specific project. The rock, paper, scissors ones comes to mind again, because I had only trained it with me, with me doing the rock, paper, scissors hand gesture. But you see, I took pictures right here in my office. But when I, launched the model and had someone else play with it, it didn't recognize anything. One, because so the concept of null images is very important. So what null images are training your model to do is it's training your model to recognize that this is not what it's supposed to be looking for, right? So
okay. Yep.
So one of my bosses at the job launched the model, and his office, I think he was at a WeWork or a co-working space, it had 3 light bulbs in the ceiling that kind of look like you could easily fool a CV model to recognize it as scissors, like the scissors hand gesture, because of the three points, right? Because it was
okay. Mm-hmm.
So it was in that shape, and it recognized that as scissors because it didn't have enough null images of things like that, things saying, hey, this is not scissors, only this is scissors.
Oh, like you have to find things that are of a similar shape and structure, but that are wrong. Basically, you have to teach it what is wrong as much as you do different ways of being right.
That's right.
Interesting.
Yeah.
This is like blowing my mind. This is such like a fascinating space that I've spent 0 time in.
Very enchanting. And then also there's and it was just me, and then I eventually got a girlfriend to take pictures and send it to me so I could upload it to the model. But then when male coworkers would throw up their hands, it would still the metrics for it wasn't very high. So for example, like if you would have thrown a paper hand gesture, maybe it would have been like, oh, I'm 40% sure that this is paper. And that's because men have larger hands than women. So it's like, oh, maybe this isn't the paper. Maybe this is something else.
Huh. So that is, wow. Yeah. So you have like something that sounds so simple. Like I'm going to teach this. I'm going to build this CV model out of 3 hand gestures. Turns out to be this whole big thing because you have to account for so many different variables in the process.
Yeah. And then imagine if you're a game developer trying to develop a rock, paper, scissors game using computer vision. So like who's going to be your users? Kids also, right? So you need to train your model to detect these tiny little hands that are going to throw up the rock, paper, scissors hand gesture.
Do you feel like is any part of this the current state of maturity of these platforms, or is it like is this always going to be a thing? Like if you're always going to have to account for lights in the background and different sized hands if you were to build this, or it's like the platform or the foundation on which you build these programs, are they getting better to the point where you have to do less or worry less about bias?
That's a really good question. It's difficult for me to answer that because what you can do, you can always train your model from a checkpoint. So, and that could be like like from COCO, from a COCO checkpoint, which is like a pre-trained model that's pre-trained to recognize a bunch of things, right?
Okay.
So like you can train your own model and then train it from using that checkpoint. However, and I'm not saying that the COCO that this is the fact with COCO, I'm not sure, but like how accurate is that model? How accurately was that model trained to detect the object that you're trying to detect? Let's say it's cars. Like what kind of data is in there? Is it only Mercedes? Is it only Teslas? Is it like trucks as well? You know, does that make sense?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah, it does get complicated. That would be
like it's like a building like if you're going to build it's like a template for a website. You have a starting point, and the website already has some of these pieces, and you can build on top of those, essentially something like that.
That's a really good analogy. Yeah. This would be also a really good question for an AI researcher like Dr. Tanek Kubru. She would definitely like have a better answer than I just gave. But yeah, those are my thoughts based on my experiences building CP models.
Love that. Fascinating. Okay, well, we have a few minutes left, so let's transition into our third and final segment, which is called, how do we say three? Trays. Okay. All right. I feel like this is the beginning now. Now I feel like I've got to go learn Portuguese, right? This is I have the foundation. No, that's all right. Okay, so this segment we tend to just do short questions with short answers. I say tend to because some of my questions that I keep coming back to are becoming infamous and are getting longer. So feel free to pass on any of these and give quick answers or go more into depth if you want. All right. Ready?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do it. Question number one. I feel like you kind of touched on this. Maybe you have a different answer. I'll just ask it. What has been your biggest win in your career so far?
Oh, that's a difficult question. Man, I don't know. It's actually not a technical answer at all. I would just say I think my biggest win is being able to understand like when I am feeling some type of imposter syndrome, that this is a good thing because it means that I'm about to level up even more in whatever it is that I'm practicing, whether that's in software engineering or in data science. I'm about to gain more skills. I feel like when I'm feeling imposter syndrome, it's a good signal that I'm about to learn something that I'm scared to learn because I'm the newest person in the room.
That is such a good answer. That's
okay.
I don't know. You just articulated something that I feel like I've been like trying to reason with over the last year or so, like shifting in totally different jobs, totally different space. And I'm like, wow, I'm with these amazing people all the day. Am I every day, all day? Am I
Mhm.
really supposed to be here? And then eventually it just starts to click. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, yep, now I can fire at your level. And this is, yeah, things are happening. But I hadn't been mindful enough to put it into those terms. But that's a great way, like being mindful that not getting overwhelmed with the imposter syndrome, but actually using that as motivation to keep going.
Yeah. It's like a signal that, okay, this is good. You're supposed to be here. You're about to level up.
Yes, that's so
Mhm.
that's so great. Okay, number two. What's the what? So you've done a lot of technical writing, and as somebody who only knows a single language, we talked before the show, and you said you can speak 3.5 languages. So what is the hardest part about being or maybe is it difficult, but yeah, I'll just say, what's the hardest part about writing when you're fluent in multiple languages? Or is it not hard? Do you not even think about it? You're just like, this is English, I know what I'm doing, let's do it.
Yeah, pretty much. I think I've only the only time I needed to write in a language other than English was when I was volunteering at Brave, like translating documentation from English to Portuguese. But that was already written for me. I just needed to translate it.
Oh, okay. So
Mhm.
when you're in writing mode, you're kind of just default English. That's
Default English, yeah.
gotcha. Okay. Okay.
English is also my strongest language. Like even though it's my third language, I speak it better than any other language. And I also have an American accent in every language.
Okay. Okay. So it's yeah, I guess that makes sense. If you've got whether it's a go-to writing language or your dominant language, that you're probably not um or maybe it doesn't matter. Yeah, maybe it doesn't matter even if you're writing in multiple languages. You just you
Mhm.
get in the zone. And well, I guess since we're on the subject, is it like, does that translate um to speaking as well? Like, or you just kind of like get your mind into, this is the language we're conversing in, and so you're not really thinking about that.
No, it takes time. It takes like a few minutes for it to click. So like at first
Okay.
I'll probably be mixing, like if it's Spanish, I'll be mixing Spanish and English a lot until I'm comfortable enough to not mix it anymore.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay.
Mhm.
Interesting. Okay. Number three. Um, so I know you've spent most of your life in the States, but curious, having come from or yeah, come from Brazil, what is something that most people might not know about Brazil?
Mm, it's a good question. Maybe that um, I don't know. I feel like, and this is something that I learned recently. The Carnival in Brazil is probably like the craziest party anyone will ever go to. and
Okay.
and the floats that they do is it's actually for a specific samba school. I didn't know that. I thought it was just like random people partying and showing off what they built that year. Um, yeah, and then like whoever has the best um, float and the best design and the best dances would win that the competition. This whole time I just thought it was like a wild, crazy party that happens every February, but it's an actual like competition that people take very seriously.
Okay. And so does it all happen in one location? Or well, is it all in
Rio, I
Rio?
think. Yeah, I think so.
Mhm.
I think it's all
Okay.
in Rio. Yeah. Hmm.
Interesting. And it's all about, one school competition.
Yeah, it's a bunch of schools competing against each other.
Oh, a
Samba
bunch of schools.
school.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like it's a kind of dance. It's like salsa, but it's not. It's like samba. It's like a type of dance from Brazil.
Okay. Yeah,
Hmm.
interesting. I had no idea. Amazing.
Yeah, me neither until recently.
Okay, so next one might be tough because you're already in a transition state and moving to ANSYS, but you've gone back to you've done these different boot camps or gone back to some form of school and made a lot of changes. And so I'm saying bold prediction or asking, what's your next career move? Or maybe what do you think you go back to school for next? Or do you feel like you found something that you're going to stay at with for a while?
Yeah, I'm already in school again. I'm doing
great.
I'm doing the Reforge growth, product, and engineering courses, just to like for continuous improvement. Just learning, like building on what I already know, and learning more about leadership and growth metrics and things of that nature, and product as well, and the product management process, which I actually don't know a lot about. So excited to learn stuff there. I'm in the middle of building my own product as well with a co-founder.
Ooh, exciting.
Yeah. And it's around NLP, which stands for natural language processing, and it's like a branch of AI. Yeah, and it's still in its very early stages, but it's just like a little side project that we're working on. And yeah, I feel like it's time to build something and put it out there as my own product, or as our own product, myself and my co-founder. Like we have the skills and we have the connections, so why not? Let's see what happens.
And so that kind of seems like it falls in line with the courses you're taking, because it's like helping round you out in the whole, like everything you need to make a product successful, more or less.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm doing startup school again this month, I think, right? We're in June. Yes, we're in June.
Okay. Okay. Oh, great. I love that you're always like gotta keep learning, get more well-rounded, go deeper. This is great. Okay, number 5. So to set this one up, I feel like, well, I should say that you mentioned some volunteer work early on that kind of helped get you started, and I did a similar sort of thing. I feel like that's a great way to get started. Give back to community or friends or whatever that might be, and yeah, they get something out of it, but you get something potentially more valuable. But I've also noticed that you've worked with some nonprofits throughout your career and continued to volunteer in different ways. And so I think that there's like a common, I'm trying to think of the best way to set this up. I feel like there's this, there's a lot of like it's really big in our industry to contribute to open source, and that in a way gets kind of I don't know if it's passed off, but it's like it's a form of giving back to a community. Like if you're, I think in its most pure state, that is true. I know there are different versions of open source today where some people are working out in the open, but it's a company sponsored or what have you. But I think in the purest open source sense, that sense of community and giving back is true there. Okay, so using that to set it up. 2-part question is in part number 1 is in giving back or volunteering your time, what has been the most rewarding experience? And part number 2 is, what would you say to convince newer developers or even maybe seasoned developers what they should be doing to give back, and maybe not even to their development communities, but like their human or physical communities as well?
Sure. Oh, really good questions. So for the first one, I think the most rewarding one is the one that I'm currently doing, which is community management at Correlation One. So there, I'm essentially just helping the students and alumni land their first data jobs. either as data analysts, data scientists, or like anything adjacent to that, right? And I'm doing like resume reviews, LinkedIn reviews, like practicing for interviews, coming up with project ideas to put on a data folio, which is like a portfolio, but for data science related projects. So that's really rewarding. And it also helps. It's also very humbling because like my mind is always go, go, go. You're not working fast enough. You need to be doing like 3 things at once. Where when I'm working with them, it's like, okay, like take a step back. Like remember you were feeling the way this person in front of you was feeling not 2 years ago. And you were having all of these same problems. So, like, what did you do to get out of that? And then just giving that same advice. And this is also how you network. So, like, people ask me, oh, how do I network? Well, you network by volunteering your time and helping other people, like, use your skills to help others. And the second question, can you repeat it for me, Sean?
Yeah. So, what would you, what advice would you give to a developer to spend their time, to convince them to spend their time giving back, whether it's um, to actual like tech communities or also to their physical human communities where they live?
Sure. So there are 2 places where I usually go to look for volunteer roles, and that is the Climate Action Tech workspace and the Work on Climate Slack workspace. So they're both for climate tech related companies, and I just go in there. I'm like, hey, these are my skills. I'm looking to volunteer. Who needs help? And then from there, I figure out like where I can add the most value. So that's the route I took. Like anyone listening can take that route as well. I personally love volunteering on climate tech companies. I learn a lot being around that. But there are other ways, right? There you can volunteer for think of a product, think of a library or a product that you love, and see if they have an open source project that needs help. And the one that I did a long time ago was Brave. So they needed help translating tech documentation. So I just did that in Portuguese. In terms of locally, that's a tough one because I'm pretty. I live like in cyberspace. Like I barely go outside. Yeah, that's tough. Sorry.
I guess I mean, in a way, you did that with your dentist.
Yeah, I
Just
guess
like
I did.
um,
But she paid me though,
they,
so I don't know if that's volunteering.
oh, okay. Yeah. I guess not, but I suppose you could do something like that. But
Mhm.
yeah, that's fair. And I think I also meant that that it's not necessarily just like you did talk about a library or a product you love, but before that, talking about the climate action tech, that it's a cause you believe in or somebody who's doing something well and you want to give your time to help them. So maybe not necessarily something that benefits you, but being able to use your skills to do that, to help a cause you believe in. I feel like that's really it's powerful, and I tie that also to the that you could pull but the answer that you had given to the previous question, that you can actually get the benefit of networking and expanding your network as a result of volunteering, which is like can't really put a price on that. That can come in handy and to an invaluable amount in the future.
Exactly.
All right, I have 3 more. Let's I have to, but I feel like I have to ask them. Well,
Mhm.
you know what? Here, I'll shrink it down to two. Although the first one is, I only thought I was going to ask it one time, and then it's been so interesting. So I just keep asking it, and it's a four-parter. So
Okay.
I'll help guide you through this. Okay, four-parter. So scenario is, you can take anyone to lunch, living or not living, and the questions are: who would it be? Uh, where would you take them? What would you order? And what topic would you discuss first?
Um, Probably Lex Friedman. Do you know who that is?
Don't think so.
He's an AI researcher and he has like a podcast as well. Um, he's interesting. I would take
Okay.
him out to lunch. Um, where would we go? I don't know. Probably a Russian steakhouse in Texas. Um, that's where he lives, and he's Russian. What would we talk about? Oh, what would we order? Um, okay, so I don't think he eats anything else except meat, so he would probably order
You would get steak.
some kind of animal, yeah. And then I would order a salad because I'm vegan vegetarian. And then what would we talk about? We would talk about AI related topics like CVN and NLP.
Amazing. You had that ready to go. That
You know
usually
why,
takes me a
Sean?
minute.
I have a that's my celebrity crush. So like as soon as
Okay. All right. So you're ready, like you're ready to
you
pull the trigger on this whenever it happens. You're ready to go. Like, got a ticket booked to Texas. We're going to a Russian steakhouse. This is good. Okay. All right. Last question of the day, and my second favorite question of every show is: what is the worst mistake that you have made I usually say as a developer, but as a developer, evangelist, data scientist, all the things you've done. What's the worst mistake you've made in your career so far?
do you want like a technical answer or just like a general or
Doesn't
both?
have to be. Whatever feels right.
So I think the technical answer would be it sums up to rushing too much. So for example, submitting a PR and requesting a review for it before you actually write the description of what this PR does and like what problem it's solving in the code base. Especially like when the person that you requested the review for is like super fast and is the CTO, and he's going to be like, why can you add a description on here? Well, yeah, I'm in the process of adding it. I just requested you to review it first, which is not the right order that you're supposed to do things. And then also not QAing my own PRs in terms of the stakeholders that it affects. So for example, if I am making a change on a certain page to include a table of contents library. And I know that this page is very valued by the marketing department because like the company just gets a lot of traffic and a lot of valuable users from it. Well, if I add this library, like how is that going to affect page speed optimization? Like probably really bad. So maybe I need to have a conversation with the marketing department. Hey, yeah, it's cool that you want to add this table of contents because it might help with SEO in terms of like the H1s, H2s, H3s, but it's gonna excuse me, it might like there's a trade-off in the page speed optimization for it. So like what do you want to prioritize? What do you think is better? Like before just doing it and then them maybe changing their minds or like maybe just having that complaint, hey, this is taking too slow. Why is it taking too slow? And me already knowing why, you know, just like
Mhm.
just making sure you're QAing for things like that for individual stakeholders internally. And then for like a non-technical answer would be I made the mistake up until recently of not valuing my experience pre-tech. So, for example, I was a bank manager while I was in university, um, a branch manager at a bank while I was in university. And when I first started that job, I sucked. Like I had employees quitting left and right. I was not a very good manager or leader. And that's really expensive, right? When your employees quit, because
Mm-hmm.
one, you have to spend money on recruiting other people, putting it up on LinkedIn or Indeed or wherever it is that you are showcasing the job description. And then two, um, you have to pay for overtime for yourself and for other employees because you're missing a person. And then also it's a waste of time because now you have to spend all this time onboarding a new person, right? And I was totally ignoring like all these skills. And the way I got better at that was I had a mentor way back when, and he just fed me one sentence. He said, when you're a manager, your employees do not work for you, you work for them. So that means you need to make sure that they have all the resources they need to make sure they're doing a good job. You need to treat them the way that they specifically want to be treated. So for example, you might have an employee that's really ambitious. So right then and there, you're going to think, okay, this person's probably going to get bored after 3 months. So I'm going to need to feed them additional projects, to keep them like excited about the job. And maybe you have another employee that is very introverted, and he or she may not want to come to you with the blockers that they're experiencing. You need to make sure that you are creating an environment where they feel safe enough to feed you that information. Or let's say you have another employee that has COVID that week, and that there's a deadline coming up. Is that employee gonna, complete that deadline while they have COVID? Probably not. So maybe you want to push the deadline or give it to another member of your staff. So things like that. Just like keeping that sentence in mind. Your employees not work for you, you work for them. Like it's like an MBA in management in under 3 minutes.
Yes, I love that. There's something really powerful in that idea of that. Just because you weren't working in tech before
Mhm.
doesn't mean that you weren't working toward what you're or weren't building skills that you can still use today.
For sure. Yeah.
Love that. Also, love the not queuing your own PRs. I feel like there's I think a lot about um, one one of the most valuable skills that I think I've built over my career in the coding space has been, well, really, it's just I'm thinking about it specific to code, but might not be, is being mindful enough of everything that you're doing and having an answer for questions. And so it doesn't
Mhm.
it doesn't necessarily mean slowing down and moving at a snail's pace so that you have to consider every little thing and it's going to
Mhm.
take a year to get a PR through. But it also doesn't mean moving so fast that you're distracted and not thinking about all the pieces. And
Yeah.
so I feel like I'm improving on this all the time because I feel like we get stronger whenever anybody is asking a question about our work or we make a
Mhm.
mistake here and we're like, oh, I didn't consider that, or I don't have an answer for you, I have to go do that. It's like, okay, well, next time I'm going to make sure I have an answer for that thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know, I love that.
Matt Greenberg, the CTO of ReForge, I asked him once when I was still working at Career Karma, I did an interview with him, and I asked him, what's the biggest difference that you see between like an associate level engineer and a senior level engineer? And he said empathy. So like just working with empathy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, totally, great answer. Okay, well, that's it for today. Thank you so much, Kelly. This was so much fun.
Thanks for having me. I had fun as well.
All right, now before we go, why don't you, I guess you can take a minute to tell listeners and viewers how to get in touch with you, and go ahead and feel free to plug anything that you're working on right now.
Oh, sure. So I'm most active on LinkedIn. So it'll be like /n/Kelly Moore. And on Twitter, it's at Miss Kelly Moore. those are like the only two that I use, I think.
Great. Great. Okay, well, that's it for this show. Thank you all for listening, watching. Thank you for your support. We will be back in 2 weeks live on June 16th with Suze Shardlow of Redis. So from all of us at CFE.dev, thank you for joining us for this show. We'll see you next time.